Okay, so to recap. Last episode, we heard from Tim Ryder,
We catch cod, pollock, haddock, cusk on rod and reel, all by hand.
a small-scale fisherman from Maine who sells fresh, local fish direct to consumers and restaurants for a premium price,
Those fish are on our customers' plate 24 to 48 hours after swimming around.
but who's having trouble making the business work because of the way fishing regulations are designed in New England.
It's a fail for a small business owner. I'll tell you right now, it's a fail.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA, oversees regulation of the fishing industry. And in New England, many of the groundfish stocks, fish like cod, haddock, and flounder, are regulated under a catch share system. Fishermen own a certain amount of the total for each species, and they can either catch those fish themselves or lease them to other fishermen. It's designed to reduce overfishing, and it's based on a simple idea.
Ownership promotes stewardship.
That's Seth Masinko, the University of Rhode Island professor who studies fisheries management systems.
So they think if you own it, you'll take care of it.
And it's often used to address what's often known as the tragedy of the commons.
That's Niaz Dori from the Northwest Atlantic Marine Alliance, a group that advocates for small-scale fishermen.
If you've got this big pool of stuff and everybody wants to go after it, how do you manage that? But what they neglect to recognize is the concept of commons means somebody does own it. It's the public that owns it.
According to this way of looking at things, catch shares take a public resource, the fish in the sea, and privatize it.
We're talking about the equivalent of, free land. Because, we could just be leasing from the government at a municipal level even. But we go down this individual private property road, and what you're unleashing here is sort of full-blown capitalism, and it's hard to, you got a tiger by the tail.
So my name's Pat Shepard. I'm the manager of the Northeast Coastal Communities sector.
Pat manages the sector that Tim Ryder belongs to. So what is the definition of a sector?
A sector is really just a group of fishermen who all share common interests.
Pat does the paperwork and keeps everything in order for the regulators so the fishermen can go out and fish. Pat's sector is designed for small-scale fishermen like Tim.
I actually often tell people I wish my job didn't exist. I wish I didn't have to be a sector manager. I think to take a public resource and privatize it and put a dollar value on it, it leads to consolidation in the fishery, which we've seen.
By consolidation, Pat is talking about the industry getting concentrated in the hands of a few big operators.
And consolidation leads to a bunch of other problems. The small-scale guys can't afford to operate in the fishery, so they either sell their permits to one of the larger-scale operators who has deep enough pockets to buy it, or they just surrender it.
The number of active groundfish boats in New England has gone down, way down. From 571 boats in 2009, before catch shares were introduced, to 307 in 2014, the last year data are available for. That's a 46% drop over 5 years. But consolidation didn't start with catch shares. Back in 1996, there were over 1,000 boats catching groundfish in New England.
It was already occurring, but this pours gasoline on the fire.
Critics of the regulations say there should have been caps on the total amount of the catch any one fisherman can own. That would have kept consolidation in check.
They had the opportunity to put controls on this program. So, for example, in Alaska, they have a 1% cap on ownership in the halibut fishery. At the time, they laughed about the Alaskans doing this. Now, the Alaska program looks like the poster child for socially responsible catch shares. But in New England, they elected not to do anything.
One byproduct of all that consolidation? Smaller towns and cities along the coast that used to have lots of working fishermen now have few or none.
The effect on communities can, in some cases, be even more devastating than the effect on individuals, because individuals can move. So you get consolidated, you're out of the industry. Well, the theory always was that you would move and you'd go to Dayton and make tires and the United States would be better off. Communities don't move. So communities get stranded by consolidation.
So when I come in here, I spend my money at Jackson's Hardware, Kittery.
Tim Ryder.
I grab a sandwich down the street from the local sandwich store. I get my fuel here at the marina from Butch. And we try to get what we can locally because it's where we live.
The pattern is the same around the world. You get consolidation. That shouldn't be any surprise, right? These programs are designed to promote consolidation. And some people will even argue, that's a good thing, that's what you need.
Consolidation it's very negative sounding.
That's Ben Martens. He's the executive director of the Maine Coast Fishermen's Association.
Unfortunately, what kind of needed to take place and we're currently going through right now is we don't have enough fish to go around. There's always this want to look back in time and talk about the good old days and how things were so much better when anybody could get a permit and go fishing. But that's what collapsed our industry. We need to have fewer boats participating in the fishery, and we need to have more fish out in the ocean.
Okay, so if the problem was that there were too many fishermen, then consolidating the fishing industry to a few big players, that should improve the health of the ecosystem. The catch share system has been in place now in New England for 8 years, so we should be able to see some results. And according to NOAA, the results are mixed. Some types of fish that had been in decline before the catch share system are starting to come back, like haddock and redfish. But others aren't doing so well, like cod. Cod stocks have actually declined since catch shares were introduced.
What I've seen is a reduction in the number of vessels and not an increase in the ecological output of the ecosystem. In fact, I don't know the last time we heard good news from the Gulf of Maine. What we hear all the time is we need to cut back, we need to cut back, we need to cut back. And so to me, it hasn't worked.
Cod stocks have been on the decline in New England since the 1980s. And the causes are complex, from a decline in the kinds of fish cod like to eat to climate change. But Seth Masenko is skeptical that consolidation is necessarily good for the ecosystem.
You can overfish a particular fishery with 20 boats, you can overfish it with 200 boats, and you can overfish it with 2,000 boats if you can't determine safe catch levels and enforce them.
The system is designed to stop overfishing and let depleted stocks like cod rebuild. NOAA scientists report on the health of the stocks, and regulators can raise or lower the total quota allowed for each population of fish. So if the number of cod, say, is going down, regulators can reduce the allowable catch, making the quota more expensive to lease. That was the problem we talked about in the last episode. But the high cost of quota creates a perverse incentive.
So if you go out fishing and you're going to be targeting pollock or haddock and you're catching cod as a piece of that day out on the water, there's no incentive for you to land it. And in fact, there's an incentive for you to throw it back into the ocean.
Throwing dead fish back in the ocean is called discarding, and it's against the rules. So no one will admit to doing it. But everybody I talk to acknowledges that it happens.
Large cod are like $3-ish. Market cod or medium-sized cod are $2. Smaller ones are less than $2. What are you going to keep? If you don't have an observer, you're kicking the little stuff over and keeping large cod. You never see very much small cod on the auction. They just disappear. They don't exist.
NOAA puts observers on fishing boats to try to discourage rule breaking, or at least to document it.
They take that data and extrapolate it out amongst the fleet to determine how many fish are going back into the ocean.
But only 15% of fishing trips actually get an observer.
15% is just way too low of a number to get accurate data. And all of the research that's being done right now is showing that there's major bias effects that are taking place on those trips versus others.
Without good data, there's no way to know how much discarding actually happens, or how it affects the health of the fish stocks that catch shares were designed to protect.
For me, it's all about scale.
Pat Shepard again, the manager of Tim Ryder's sector.
You keep it small scale, you reduce the impact to the environment, you can still catch fish, and 10 small scale boats provide for many more families than one huge boat. In America, I think we've gotten really lazy about our food. We want it prepackaged, we want it portioned, we want it vacuum sealed, frozen, we want a YouTube video to show us how to cook it. how many people do you know that will butcher a whole fish at home? We need to get back to that. Going to meet a boat at the dock, getting a couple of fresh fish off of them, and that's what will secure a fair price for the fishermen that are catching our seafood, and it'll connect us a lot better to what we're eating because we know where it came from.
Tinkering with regulations, caps on consolidation, observers enforcing the rules. None of that matters if what we're eating is fish sticks and farmed salmon. Could buying local fish actually help the environment and the fishing industry?
Sure, if we had a population that was willing to pay for the fish. Americans eat about 15 pounds of seafood a year. That's the same number of pounds that they eat of turkey. And I don't know a lot of turkey farmers. Most people don't, they're willing to pay extra for a locally grown carrot. They're not willing to pay extra for locally caught fish.
The Briny is produced by me, Matt Frasica. Thanks for listening.